Okay, next phase, repurposing. We can transform raw research into valuable content by staging data in a spreadsheet or a visual database, and we can have AI tools repurpose the content for use in different areas. We don't need to store the data in a spreadsheet. We don't need to store the data in a visual database like Airtable, for example, that we'll cover later. We could just take the results of our research and drop some data into a text file, and then we could copy and paste into ChatGPT, and we could go from there. So that's a manual representation of what we can do. But if we use a spreadsheet like Google Sheets, or even not a web-based sheet like Google Sheets, we could use numbers locally on a laptop or Excel. But if we use Airtable or Notion or Google Sheets to stage our content, and then we can begin to automatically, or with an automated process, we can repurpose that content. So we can figure out a workflow that takes our research and repurposing and keeps all of the data in order so that we can eventually publish it. So once we've gathered data, we can use ChatGPT. It's the large language model that everyone knows, and it's been just revolutionary for this generation of business owners, educators, home educators. It reaches into all different areas of life. It's an app on my phone. I use it every single day. I use ChatGPT to write email responses sometimes. I have an email application called Superhuman that does some of the heavy lifting for me automatically without needing ChatGPT. But I still find that even with AI's reach going into other tools, becoming more and more widespread in the other tools that we use online, I still find myself going back to ChatGPT. I love the results that I get from ChatGPT. There are different language models. Some are cheaper when we leverage them at scale than others. Some are more effective. As time goes on, as ChatGPT develops, then it still remains for me a daily go-to for research, but also for quickly creating content to leverage in different ways, like emails or this presentation, this course, No Code Mavericks, and it's a super useful tool to leverage. So it's an AI language model. It's developed by OpenAI, and it can generate human-like text responses. It's useful for tasks like drafting content or answering questions without coding. So it's effortless rewriting of content. It can adapt tone and style. I can ask ChatGPT to write in the style of a particular copywriter. I could even provide examples of the style that I want ChatGPT to use, and it will return the content to me or the content planning in the style of that individual that I've asked. Very powerful. It generates fresh perspectives. It's like having a team of people that will think. It's like the hive mind. Like, rather than having a team of people, I can quickly go to ChatGPT and quickly get different perspectives that fire off other ideas, other avenues of research, or other avenues of content creation. And I love it. It's super powerful. And it's one of the most powerful no-code tools in my tool stack. And it's even more powerful because it can be automated when we build it into a stack with other no-code tools. Okay, let's talk about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is available to me every day on my laptop. I have the app downloaded, so whenever I have a browser open and I'm working or researching or interacting on my laptop, I would tend to not open ChatGPT in the browser. I tend to just open it in the app. I have the app available on my phone as well. So if I am walking, if I'm waiting in a shop for my wife, I have ChatGPT available to me, and I can process my ideas, which are then documented because I'm having a virtual conversation with ChatGPT. So it's almost like a notebook. It's a platform where I can just throw around ideas, get quick feedback, which then influences my thought process and influences the strategies that I might put into place, just whatever I'm exploring. So it's always available to me. And so if I show you the app just now, the last thing I asked ChatGPT to help me with was just this section of the course. What should I focus on in ChatGPT? Of all of the vast array of possibilities that are opened up to me through the use of ChatGPT and other large language models, then what should I share just now? And so when I'm thinking in different areas of my life, I tend to think now in partnership with ChatGPT or with Perplexity. And I can move quickly in thinking about different ideas. Everything's documented. Quite often I'll have a quick search on ChatGPT or a brief conversation on ChatGPT just to get it out of my head, get it documented, and then I can come back to it later. I might often to interact with ChatGPT, but I find it very useful at times, especially if I'm walking on my own. Then if I have my headphones in with my phone, then I might use the voice function as well. I find that just quite an interesting way to communicate back and forth. It's quicker as well. If I'm walking, I don't need to look down at my phone to do it. And so different situations, you can leverage text or voice, and it can just be a different way of discussing different ideas. So if I'm processing, then I might just speak it out to get it out. And it's faster than typing as well. So different ways to interact with ChatGPT. Let me just show you something just now. If I start a new conversation with ChatGPT, I could say, what do you know that I've been thinking about a lot lately and that I've been asking you about? Thanks. Just want to see what added context you're referencing in our conversations. Let's see. So here's a summary of recent topics and focuses that you've been particularly interested in. So this could be dangerous if I didn't know that the content that I've been, looking at is safe to share with you, but drumming content for Sticks Talk, on a platform that I've been building and that I'll walk you through shortly, that we'll build together. Affiliate promotions and new classes. You're actively involved in affiliate promotions and recently added a class with Greg Rowlett to add skills, informing members about making commissions and being pre-approved for a top affiliate network. That's an interesting one. I'm not too sure how that's kind of gotten into the ChatGPT context. Perhaps I needed to repurpose one message for one platform before I summarized it and put it into Trello, for example. Maybe that's where that reference is coming from. No-code tools and the No-code Mavericks course. Workshops for churches and automations in AI. That's just a little snapshot of my life. Two different sides of my life coming together there. Email sequences and systemizing content and automations. So the reason I asked ChatGPT that question is to show you that ChatGPT also references information that we have previously put into our conversations with ChatGPT, things we've been researching. So there is contextual data that is wrapped around all the conversations that you have with ChatGPT. You do have the option to wipe that away and start afresh. And you can do that one conversation at a time, or you could delete the entirety of the conversations that you've had with ChatGPT. And that removes all contextual information and would give you a blank slate. Just in the same way that I might delete all of my YouTube history if I find that I'm being bucketed into one particular avenue of related content or suggested videos. I find it can be quite helpful just to say, okay, wipe the history, and there's still a contextual related content that is accurate because I have subscriptions in YouTube, but I find it useful just to wipe the slate clean. Now, I don't feel like I need to wipe the slate clean here in ChatGPT, but I did find it was interesting when I was asking ChatGPT, what should I focus on when I'm discussing ChatGPT within the context of the No-code Mavericks course. I saw that some of the references that were coming back were very tailored to be things that relate to my thought process even out with No Code Mavericks. And so I just wanted to demonstrate to you the contextual nature of the conversations that you have with the AI, and to think that sometimes that's okay, because it's good to reference these other things, because put together, they would be more relevant for me. Just like search is contextual in Google, that can be a useful thing. But if we find that it's coloring the nature of the responses that we get back from AI and ChatGPT, then it could be useful just to wipe the slate clean. Okay, let's look at prompt engineering. The responses that we get back from AI they rise and fall on the quality of the prompts that we use. We understand that. But actually the best way to get the right prompt is often to ask, what's the prompt that we should use? So we could say, teach me about prompt engineering. We start with that. So we can get information back from ChatGPT, clarity and context, formatting for structure. If you want information presented in a structured way, ask it directly, list the top 5 tips for writing prompts, or explain the process of prompt engineering in so many steps. So we could say that we can set constraints, we can consider iteration and refinement and advanced techniques. We get this information back from ChatGPT. And so rather than try to figure it out and go step by step, one at a time, and to say, thanks ChatGPT, that was close, but could you do it a little more like this? To remove the conversation, or to remove the multiple steps from your interactions with ChatGPT, I find it's just useful to say, what's the best way to ask you about this? So, for example, what's the best prompt I could use to get a short piece of writing which relates to playing the drums? We just start with that. What's the best prompt? So we're not asking for content. We're asking for help with the prompt, to know how to prompt the model so that we get the right content back again. So here's something that's suggested. Write a brief, inspiring paragraph about the thrill of playing the drums, highlighting the energy, rhythm, and connection with the music. Focus on the experiences of losing oneself in the beat, suitable for young drummers just starting out. And so part of that is contextual, because I've asked ChatGPT before about this process of me, an experienced drummer, teaching my children how to begin to play the drums. So part of that response is contextual. And so that's fine. That's okay. That's a good start. But let's take it a little bit further then. So this idea of leveraging ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT to help us with prompts. What should we input into ChatGPT to get the correct output? So if I take it a little bit further, I could say, what's a recognized copywriting model or structure for writing blog posts or articles? So we're just thinking this through, interacting with ChatGPT, and then we'll just follow this where it goes. So there's Ada, suggested using Ada as a model. So I'm quite polite when I use ChatGPT and Perplexity. I'm sure you don't need to be quite as polite as I am, but I might say, great, thanks. What would be a great series of daily posts on my blog to emphasize the basic focus for a brand new drummer? We'll just put this together. So we've asked for structure. The structure that's suggested is ADA, attention, interest, desire, and action. And then I've said, okay, well, help me with a content plan then. So just for a week, daily posts, what should I focus on? So getting to know your drum kit, how to hold your drumsticks properly, mastering the basic rudiments. These are all great. This is great content. And based on my experience as a drummer, these are excellent things to focus on. And so if we say something like, so let's focus on the day 4 post. Please suggest keywords to me which are relevant to this post. So we're asking for ChatGPT to do the research for us. And then we can say, okay, let's take these keywords and please write the day 4 post. Okay, here's a suggested post for day 4, counting and keeping time. Okay, and it's writing the post. Now, I don't love this because there's so much bullets and it's a bit stop-start, but it's fine. Can you identify each of the elements of ADA in the post you've written? So it says the attention part is an opening section, stay on beat, simple ways to develop your timing and rhythm. The title and introductory lines capture attention by addressing the core challenge for new drummers. Okay, it's keeping time. Interest, okay, so we're building context and relevance. The section titled Why Timing Matters for Drummers draws readers in by explaining how good timing makes drumming sound professional. That's great. Desire and action. So I'm just showing you how we can walk through an interaction with ChatGPT, which draws from different areas where we're not just saying, ChatGPT, write the post. We can do this in multiple steps. Right now, my example is all within ChatGPT, but I could just as easily bring in a model from outside that I've researched using Perplexity, or a structure that's been supplied or researched within the Perplexity environment. We bring that into ChatGPT, and then we can ask ChatGPT to write the post on the basis of the structure that Perplexity has suggested. And so it's getting us beyond this idea that we can just come into ChatGPT and say, give me this. We want to recognize that the quality of the output will rise and fall on the quality of the input. That's one thing to say. And the other thing to say is, as we've explored, we can actually ask what the input should be. So we come back from this idea of just saying, okay, performing monkey, give me what I need. We can have a conversation, go a little bit deeper, and get better results from our interaction. And just to emphasize that, if we go to Perplexity, we can take this summary that we had of the YouTube video, and if we say in ChatGPT, write me a post which leverages the summary of a YouTube video, give me that drumming post again, but structured as the summary describes. And there's the summary, and we'll just see what comes from there. So we're mixing these two sides. We're taking a YouTube video, we're summarizing the contents of that YouTube video using Perplexity, and then we can take that learning, that data, bring it into ChatGPT, and have something written within ChatGPT. So let's see what we've got. Using the video, these strategies, here's how the day 4 drumming post could be reimagined as a drumming skill development flywheel. Okay, it's interesting. Drumming skill development flywheel. The key to timing and rhythm mastery, audience growth flywheel for drumming, building your rhythm foundation. So learn a simple rhythm exercise, share your practice progress, encourage feedback and learn from peers, use feedback to inspire new practice routines. So what we've done there is we've gone away from using ChatGPT as simply the performing monkey, give me what I need. We've taken some wisdom from a YouTube video. We've summarized the learning from the YouTube video, and then we've brought that into ChatGPT. And so now our output from ChatGPT is informed by the research that we've done from YouTube. And so what that means for us is that our ability to leverage the research from YouTube, which is this massive hive mind, this massive silo of data, we can take that massive silo, we can learn from the wisdom that's discussed there, we can create summaries and structures or systems and strategies, and then we can bring that learning into ChatGPT, and then our writing and our content creation can be informed by that much wider silo of data, and it becomes useful within the contextual conversation that we're having in ChatGPT, because ChatGPT knows that I'm interested in automations, that I'm interested in content creation, that I'm working on a No Code Mavericks course right now. And so all of this works together to make our personal output much more relevant and informed without the huge learning curve. I personally know individuals who can synthesize these things that we've learned from a YouTube video and then the output that we've come to from ChatGPT. I know people who can do that and have been doing it for years. But what we're able to do in this season with no-code tools is to take our own experience and multiply the effectiveness of that experience that we have. We can take the experience of others and absorb that into our systems and into our strategies. And what we're trying to get away from is taking something that exists on YouTube and saying, that's a really great content piece. I'm going to take that, put my name on it, and then publish it. That's not what we're doing here. But what we can do is increase our speed of learning, increase our ability to think and process the data that we're learning from and the principles and the strategies that we're learning from. We can absorb them into our own workflows quickly, and we can enhance our output by leveraging no-code tools. So we're not copying, we are increasing our effectiveness by taking something where someone discusses a strategy. We take the niche or the area of research that we exist in, and then we can marry those things together to elevate our output and make it much more effective. We talked about different ways to interact with ChatGPT. We can type and use text to interact. We can use voice chat that's useful in some environments. Like if I'm walking, I'd like to use voice chat with ChatGPT. But that's the inputs. We can actually get different outputs as well. So let's take what we've learned in that last step there and just render it in a different format. Let's see what this will come up with. So if we say, we take this strategy, we can copy this, and then we could go over to a different plugin, whimsical plugin, and we could say, render this in a mind map format. So I can take what we've learned in the last interaction and render it slightly differently. Let's wait for this diagram to come through. So here's the drumming skill development flywheel mind map. So we've got an audience growth flywheel. This just comes back to the original YouTube video that we're using as a model, using it as an example for how we can take someone's wisdom and apply it in different scenarios. So audience growth, learn a simple rhythm, share your practice progress, encourage feedback and learn from peers, use feedback to inspire new practice routines. And then a revenue generation flywheel, strengthen timing skills with focused practice, track and celebrate progress, apply skills to play along with songs, gain positive feedback and recognition. Okay. And benefits of the flywheel, compounding growth, sustainable motivation. Okay. So that's fine. I'm not sure the revenue one is particularly accurate, but we can see data. We can just render it in a different format that's useful in different environments. I could take that into a meeting. I can use it in a report. I can describe a system or a process rather than having a great deal of text. We can render it in a mind map format that could be useful. If I go to a different model, we go to DALL-E. I have this content strategy. Please suggest an image which should go along with one of the content pieces. I'm probably going a bit quick there. Share some details. Okay, that's fine, because I meant to add in the actual content that we want to use to leverage. Okay, so there's an image description. And so if we just push up DALL-E one step further, we can just say, create one of these images. Let's see what's suggested. So here's an image. it relates more to the strategy and structure of the overall content model that we have drawn from a YouTube video and then applied to our drumming project. But I could just as easily say, create an image of a father teaching their kid how to play drums. Let's see what comes up with that. Let's grab this prompt. Okay, so here are the images capturing the warm moment of a father teaching his child how to play the drums. Let me know if you'd like any further details added. Okay, great. So that works. That works for us, okay? But if we go back to our original conversation, prompt engineering basics, if we say, here's a prompt I used to have DALL-E create an image. What could be a more effective prompt? So let's learn from DALL-E, learn from ChatGPT, how to improve the prompt that we're feeding into DALL-E, and then see what result we get. So create a heartwarming image of a father teaching his child how to play drums in a cozy, well-lit room. So there's context. The father is seated beside the child, guiding their hands on the drumsticks with a look of encouragement and patience. The child is smiling with excitement and concentration, seated in front of a small drum kit. The room is warm and inviting with family photos and music posters on the wall, creating a supportive and inspiring atmosphere for learning. Okay, that's great. So let's go to DALL-E and we'll pop that in. We'll see what comes back. Okay, so here are the images of a heartwarming scene where a father teaches his child how to play drums in a cozy, inviting room. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. So one thing to say is I think that hands are being rendered with much more accuracy these days, and fingers, and but there's an effective image. Either of those images are very effective, whereas the first image that came back was a bit lighter, less detail, and so context for me and the use of when interacting with ChatGPT or Perplexity or any of these tools, context is so important. And I mean that with regards to the history of the conversation that we've had, that colors and informs the output that we get. So that's really good. But actually what we learned there about prompts on the image side is that we can put in a simple request for an image and we get the correct image back. But wrapping that request with context about the look of the photo, about the emotions involved in the image rather than the photo, the environment, what the room is like, the musical instrument that's there, proximity of one person to another, the look on someone's face. Context is great in relation to the history of the conversation that we have with ChatGPT, but also then providing ChatGPT with context will inform a much more effective output from any of our interactions, but we can see it quite strongly here with regards to images and the output from DALL-E. Okay, so the last thing to say on context and on leveraging ChatGPT to inform our own prompt engineering, the effectiveness of our prompts is super important. And we see that in this manual process where I'm interacting with ChatGPT, I'm responding to ChatGPT and continuing the conversation. It's a manual process. It happens in real time. But the effectiveness of our manual process relies on the quality of the input, and so does the output that we get from an automation. And so that's why it's important to spend time manually interacting with ChatGPT, dialing in the prompts that we're going to use in our systems, our automations. And the more time that we take to dial in those prompts that are inputs, then the more effective the output of our automations will be. And the other thing that we can do is we just get started. You know, we start with a manual process. We automate that process that we've figured out as we've worked manually. We get the output from the automations that we build, and then we can review. and we can dial in the prompt. So the prompts that are baked into the automation, then we can pull those out. We can feed them into ChatGPT manually and say, how would you improve this? This is the output we got from the automation. What should I do to improve the output by editing the input? And then we get feedback in real time from ChatGPT, and then we can update the automation, which affects the output of the automation. So we've learned about context in relation to our conversations with ChatGPT and how our overall output is informed by all of the conversations that we've had that are stored within ChatGPT. We've learned that the context of the prompt that we're feeding into ChatGPT is important, and the more detail that we give, then the more effective the output. And then the more effective our prompt engineering becomes, then the more effective our automations become, and the less need that we have to have manual steps in our automation, because we don't then need to check every piece of work, because we can dial in the effectiveness of the prompts. And so the automation over time should become more and more effective with less and less manual input. The effectiveness of the automation should become more and more dialed in, more and more effective with less need for manual input as we dial in and optimize the prompts that make up the bulk of the automation. This is Airtable. Airtable is a cloud-based collaboration tool that combines the simplicity of spreadsheets with the power of databases. It enables you to organize and manage data without coding. It's a no-code tool. It's a visual database, very powerful. One of my favorite no-code tools. We can organize data flexibly. We can visualize information. We can stage data for repurposing. Airtable is such a powerful tool. And when Justin Brook first told me about Airtable, when I first looked at the tool, when it was fresh, when lots of people were talking about it in its infancy, I didn't see the value. I didn't see the value. Maybe not tell Justin that, but I didn't see the value. And the more I use it now, the more powerful I recognize it to be in different ways. One of the ways in our example is to stage data for repurposing. We can take data in at one point, we can move it into a different view, which triggers an automation, and that takes the content that we had, turns it into a repurposed content as we send it through a language model and get the data back. And then we may summarize a YouTube video. So we have a transcription that we've grabbed using an API and stored that data within the Airtable, within the record. Then we have a summary of that YouTube video, and we store that data in Airtable on the same record. And then perhaps then we create content on the basis of our research that may be published to Webflow, and we store that in the same record. And then we store a social media post in the same record. And we can stack up all the data. And the power of Airtable is our ability to connect Airtable to other tools, to repurpose content and to stage content and to keep track of all the content as we go. But there's great power in Airtable on the basis of the automations and the workflows that we can build. Very, very powerful. Okay, so we want to talk about Airtable, and we want to explore how to use Airtable in the context of staging content to develop content ideas or repurpose some of our research so that we can then publish to Webflow and use Airtable within a manual process and also an automated process as well. So that's what we want to look at. Airtable is powerful beyond the scope of the things that we'll look at right now, but we can explore additional aspects of Airtable later. But I want to focus on using it primarily as a way to stage content and to trigger automations. So let's have a look at a brand new table in Airtable to begin with. So I'll go ahead and click create. I won't build with AI. We want to start from scratch. Just to get an idea of what we're looking at. We're looking at the main part of Airtable in the same sense that Airtable is like a glorified spreadsheet. You find Airtable somewhere in between the world of a spreadsheet and a database. We can look at rows and columns. We can stage data in a table similar to a spreadsheet, but it's also more powerful than that in the sense that we can have each of these lines that exists as a record within a database. So it's somewhere in the middle of those two spaces, spreadsheet and database. Some things to take note of are the left-hand side here. We'll use this space extensively as we build out our case study project later on. So at the moment we have a grid view, a single view, but we could have each of these views also, or we could have additional views, but filtered to only show certain records based on the criteria that we set. So at the moment, in a brand new base, it's untitled. We could click on the arrow down here to update the title of the base. We have a table within the base. We could have multiple tables in the same sense that Google Sheets would have multiple sheets within the overall document. And those are tabbed, so you could click on each tab. So we could duplicate this one, for example, duplicate the table. And so now we've got table 1 and table 1 copy. And we could have multiple tables within this base. So the views are important. The spreadsheet format is important. We've got one main column, which at the moment is labeled as a name column. We can edit the field or edit the column. So we could change the title in here, and we could change the data that we are defining to go into this particular column. So each column could be a single line of text. So a short piece of text could be a long text. If it was a long text, we could define it to be rich text also, though not in this initial column. We could have it to be a date or phone number or email or URL and all sorts of other variations. So this is a single line of text. We'll leave that there just now. We can delete fields if we want to, and we can add on new columns if we want to do that as well. So if I wanted to add on a notes column, we could say it's a long text, label it notes, and we could create that one. If we wanted to add on body content for a blog post, for example, we could call it body content. We could say it's a long text, and we could say we want to be able to format this text as rich text so that we can take it from here, pass it into another platform already formatted if we want to do that. So we can add columns on. We only add rows on when we want to add in records. So I could delete these two if I wanted to, select them, right click and delete the selected records. Or I could just right click on an individual record and delete it there, add it back in with a plus. So let's look at a quicker way to add in the structure of our Airtable. We'll do that in two ways. I'll show you two ways which are very similar. Let's start with ChatGPT. So if we go to ChatGPT and if we say, help me define a content plan for my drumming website, Stickstalk, I'll need the plan to be in a CSV format so I can download it with columns defining things like title, keywords, category, and please add in other columns where you see fit. Suggest weekly posts for a 3-month period. Let's start with that. And we'll see what ChatGPT comes back with. And ultimately, we want to be able to download this CSV. So we're asking for a table format or a table structure. And we want to be able to download the CSV so that we can bring it into our Airtable. So let's just wait a second and see what ChatGPT comes up with. Okay, I've created a 3-month content plan for Stickstalk. You can download it here. Okay, so it skipped the visual aspect because I've asked it to be downloadable. The CSV includes suggested weekly posts with columns for title, keywords, category, post date, target audience, post type, and goal. Okay, that's fine. So show me the table here so I can review where I download. Okay, here we go. So we've got a column for weeks, column for categories, keywords for each post, titles, post types, and a goal for each post. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and download the CSV so that we can bring it into Airtable. So click to download, save it to my downloads folder, and I'll go back to Airtable. And I want to go to add or import. Okay, I want to select CSV file. I could bring data in from a number of different sources. From all of these different sources, we'll stick to a CSV just now. It serves us well. So add or import CSV file, and then I'm going to drag it from where I know the file is on my computer. Just going to drag it into Airtable and upload. So I'm going to have to make some choices as to what data is brought in. I'm going to have to define the first line as column headers. So we can import our file. We want to add it into table 1, which is here, or we can create a new table. I want to create a new table because I want the structure of the new table to be defined by the CSV that I'm bringing in to Airtable. So I create a new table, click next. Now I get to make these choices. I can define which of the fields are imported. I could select some of these to take that particular column away, but as of right now, I'm going to bring them all in. Other settings down here, auto select field types. That's good. Let's give it a go and see how Airtable defines each column as it brings the data in. And if we needed to, we could always look back and update a particular column if we want to change the data type. And it says use the first row as headers. We could toggle each of these off or on. And I do want to define the first row as headers. We can go ahead and import. Okay, so we've successfully imported our CSV that we've taken from ChatGPT. We've asked for a content plan. We've asked ChatGPT to define columns and the data structure of our CSV. We've been able to download it, and now we've brought it into Airtable, which has automatically defined the column headers and added the suggested content into the table as a number of different records. There's 12 records in total, and they go from, I think this one, let's go back and see in ChatGPT. So after category went post date, so category post date is here, and we wanted to say week 1 to week 12. So that's not quite worked out as we would want it to be. So I think let's just change this. If we just say edit the field, and we'll just say, instead of a date, we'll just say a single line of text, and we can hit save. Yes, we want to convert to this field type. So the post date is now text, a short line of text. We could take this out, clear those records, and just to check, we can say how to choose the right, drag this along a little. And while we're at it, why don't we close the left-hand column just so we can see a bit more real estate on our screen. How to choose the right drum kit for beginners, basic drumming techniques to get started. Let's check ChatGPT. So how to choose the right basic drumming techniques. So we're in the right order, and then we just want to take this column, this post date column, and update the content that's in here. So we could do it like this. We could just do it manually. We could type week 1 and week 2, or if we go back to ChatGPT, we can get that data from ChatGPT. So this column, if I go to my CSV, I can click to open it locally on my machine, opens it in a spreadsheet for me, and then I can just grab this data. So that's updated that content. So that's one way to bring in the structure of a table or a base. We've gone to ChatGPT, we've asked for a content plan, and we've been able to download the CSV file and push it in. Now, another way that we're going to interact with Airtable often in this no-code space is that we're going to marry the visual database properties of Airtable. We're going to marry that with the Webflow CMS. both sides have a structure of data. Both sides like CSVs. You can, from Airtable, we can bring a CSV into Airtable to structure data. We can export. If we go to this grid view here, or the table that we're looking at, we can see different options here, but I just want to download the CSV. If I go to my downloads, I can see imported table grid view. Okay, so that's the naming convention. We've got the name of our table and then the name of our view. If I open the views again, you can see we're looking at the grid view here. So the naming convention for each download was import table grid view. Okay, so that's how we can pull it down. I said that Airtable and Webflow both operate very well using CSVs. We can bring CSVs into Airtable and we can export them. And the same on the Webflow side. We can download a CSV from Webflow and we can import a CSV into Webflow as well to either add in new content or to update existing records that are stored within the Webflow CMS. So let's look at that just now. We go to Webflow. This is the Sticks Talk site that I'm going to build out with you later. And so if we go down the left-hand side here, we can go to the CMS, and we can see that in this particular CMS at the moment, there are a number of collections. So we want to focus on the blog posts. And if I go to the right-hand side here, we can export. So I've just exported all 11 items from the blog posts collection, which is in the CMS, the content management. And so if I go to my downloads, I'll see Stickstock blog posts. And if I click on that to open it locally on my machine, I can see that I've got 11 posts. And there is a drumming post, which is the first post, and the rest of these posts, the other 10, are just demo posts that came with the template for this particular Webflow site. So we can see a title, we have a link or a slug, and then we have some data that is relevant to Webflow. There's a collection ID, locale ID, item ID, created on this date, updated on this date, published at this date. So lots of different data points. And so rather than going into Airtable manually and setting up content to be staged to bring it into Webflow, a very useful way to set up Airtable is to define in Webflow what your data structure is going to be, pull down the CSV, and then bring it into Airtable. And that way we can use them both within our automations, and the data is structured, it's mirrored across both platforms. So the structure that we define in Webflow is brought in to Airtable, and it's just a really nice way to work then. So if we go back to Airtable, and if we bring in, let's do a new table, CSV. So we'll go to the CSV that we pulled down from Webflow, upload. Yep, we want to create a new table. Do we want to bring in every single one of these fields? Yeah, we want to do that. So we'll leave them all checked. And we want to check the settings. Do we want to auto select the field types? Yeah, let's give it a go. See how it goes. And then we definitely want to use the first row as headers because that defines our structure. We can import. It's going to create imported table 2. We might go here and rename the table and just say Webflow export Stickstock. And now we have our data staged in Airtable, brought down from Webflow, and we've got the data within Airtable that we can now edit. We can work with it here. We can automate each of these line items or records so that we could automate them back into Webflow if we wanted to. We could add on extra line items now that we've defined the data structure, and we could send them in one at a time into Webflow, or we can even download a CSV from here, upload it into Webflow, and update the content that's already in there, either to update the records that are there or to add in brand new records as well, brand new posts. Okay, let's look at an important aspect of Airtable with regards to using it to stage data to automate later. One of the important parts of Airtable is that we can set up multiple views. That's good for having, say, for example, a workflow. We might have brand new posts or draft posts, and then we might say that one is ready to publish, and we would want those to live in a different view. The other thing about that is when a record moves from one view into another view, when it meets the criteria for the new view in Airtable, that can also be a really good way to trigger an automation outside of Airtable. So let's look at the views first of all, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we can click on views. At the moment, we have grid view. It's just the default title for this particular view. And as much as we could add in a calendar view or a gallery for images, or we could have a Kanban view like Trello, I don't want to do any of these things. I just want to take these views and duplicate them at the top. So I'm going to duplicate the view. So the first view is just unfiltered. It's a grid view. You might even call it unfiltered. Double click on it, and it's an unfiltered view. It's the main view. If you want to see all of the records that exist, then we would want to see it in that particular view. And if we want to begin to stage out a workflow for our content production, for example, we might need to rely on one of these data points to say where in the process the content is. So why don't we add on, still in our unfiltered view, I could say that I want to have a single select data type, and let's call it stage. So if I bring it back closer to the title, I'm just dragging it across as I would do in Google Sheets, for example. But I'm going to edit the field, and let's say just simple Kanban language to begin with, to do, doing, done. Or it could be draft, reviewed, and published. We just want some way of defining each stage. And just to make things super obvious, let's put numbers against them as well. Oops. I'm just double clicking. Okay, so I'll save this. So now we have a way of taking each of these posts and saying what stage in our content production process, for example, what stage each of these posts is currently at. So if we say, let's match the views to the stages. We said that our stages are to do, doing, done. So click away from that. So I have an unfiltered view. Let's just say that this first view, so I've duplicated the unfiltered view, I've double clicked on the title, and I'm just going to say to do. I could label it anything that I'd like, but I'm going to just match the stages just so that it makes sense. And then just so that I see the records in this view, which are at the to-do stage, then I want to set a filter criteria. So if I go into unfiltered here, and let's just say that this first record is at stage 1, stage 2, and then this one is at stage 3. Okay, we can leave the rest of the blank just now. So in the to-do view, I only want to see the records that are at that particular stage. So I could say filter, add a condition where the stage is to do. So I have an unfiltered view where I can see every record, and I have a filtered view where I can see the record that's at that particular stage. So let's finish that thought process then. Duplicate this view, do, doing, and then if I duplicate this one, done. Doing one, need to change the criteria. Because we duplicated the to-do view, there was already a filter on here, so I can just update the stage that it's at, as opposed to having to do the whole criteria again. So doing, click away, done, filter by stage, and it's done. Okay, let's just check that. So to do, doing, done. Okay, so there's a different record in each one. Here's something that I might say would be a mistake that I just made, but I do it often. So I'll just highlight it rather than taking it out of this particular recording. So what I did was I was in the unfiltered view and I went to the end of the row of columns and I added in a data point, added in a column. I defined it as a single select data type and I defined each stage or each option that was available. And then I dragged the column all the way back to the left-hand side so that it's in a more functional place within that view next to the title. Only problem was I had already duplicated the unfiltered view so that the first filtered view was already defined. So what's happened then is in the unfiltered view, I've dragged the position of the column. I've moved it along. It's no longer in the same position when I come to the filtered views because I had already duplicated that view. So if I wanted to do this, I would have to go to the end. If I wanted it to match, I would go to the end. I could drag it along and put it into the right position, or I could kill these two views, doing and done, and then reduplicate to do now that I've moved the column. It's up to you. So I'll just do that now, just so it's uniform. Do it manually, drag it along, and done. Okay, so we have structured our data automatically by having a CSV with data structured already. We've imported the CSV into Airtable, which has automatically defined the structure of our table. And we have begun to filter the data that's contained within the table into multiple views. We're defining the views based on the stage that the content is at in our content production example, but we could filter the view by any of these data points. The most important part of defining the views when we are thinking about automating no-code and tying Airtable into other platforms using make.com or Zapier as our glue application that goes between two different platforms. So Airtable being one of them, and say Webflow, for example, or the API connection to Perplexity, or the API connection to chatgpt. The views act as a trigger. And so what we're able to say then is that, okay, this piece of content is to do. So we are to complete this piece of content. If it's a content production calendar, we might define it differently. We might say idea stage, draft, ready to publish, and published. So, for example, there would be different stages and labeled slightly differently. The way that that works, when something moves from one view into the next, let's look at that just now. So we have an unfiltered view. So this fourth line item in the unfiltered view, we could say, okay, that's going to be, right now it's to do. So it now appears in the to do view. And we can set make.com and Zapier to watch the records in the Airtable, to watch which view they live in. And as soon as the record moves into a particular view in Airtable, then make.com or Zapier will take that as a signal to begin the automation process. And the way that that would work is that Airtable sends something that we refer to as a web hook. And then make.com or Zapier, let's just talk about make.com, keep it simpler. Make.com will see that webhook and will catch that webhook if it's based on the correct criteria. So we want to send a webhook from Airtable. We want to catch the webhook with make.com. And then we want to begin an automated process within make.com before we send the data back into Airtable again. And what we can do at that point then, so say we define the automation to begin on the to-do view, we could say that, and as soon as that automation begins, we could ask make.com to send a signal back using the API, as we discussed, to update that particular record to be doing. So we define a piece of content as to do, which puts it into the to do view. Make.com sees that this record has come into the view and has begun the automation process. We could send a signal into Airtable to say that this piece of content should now be set to the doing stage. So we've sent data back into Airtable, automatically updated the stage of this content, which puts it into doing. And when the automation finishes and it's successfully, for example, published into Webflow, then we could ask make.com to update the stage of this content to be done. And we would see it in the done view. Now, if something was to go wrong in the process of that automation, if an API failed, for example, then we would want to have a way to send a signal into Airtable, or even just to fail to update a particular data point within Airtable. So instead of this content going to stage 3, if there's something that persists within the doing view, we would know that something failed in the automation and that it would draw our attention to come and have a look at the automation and to see what's wrong. And at that point, we need to figure it out. We need to figure out what's happened. And so we're staging our data in a way that allows us to see at a glance what stage a piece of content is at, and also giving ourselves a visual cue to say that something is not right, that our data has gone to this place in the automation and it's failed to proceed past there. Perhaps an API has failed on one side, either in the data that's sent or in the way that the data is received. It can happen often that an API fails. And so we'll build into our process in make.com or in Zapier. We'll build in something to give us a cue. This is a visual cue here if a piece of content stalls and doesn't get to the done stage. But we would also have the opportunity to ask make.com to say, okay, this has failed. I'm going to save that data. I'm going to try again in 15 minutes. Maybe I'll try a total of 3 times before I send a signal to say this has completely failed and attention is required. So for Airtable then, it's powerful beyond the scope of what we have looked at right now. But what we have laid out as far as staging area for data, where we can bring our research in, we can repurpose it, and then we can publish from there using automation. Even that scope is extremely powerful. And it takes us beyond the manual process. It gets us into the automation space. We're not building out funded web application and selling access to it. But as far at this stage, as far as automating a workflow within our own company or building an automation that looks like this for a client, there's great value in setting ourselves up in this manner. And so Airtable could be structured for project management, either with a Kanban view or a Gantt chart to project when tasks need to be finished by. But even in the simple views where we see records that look as if they're in a spreadsheet, filtered views, triggering automations based on the views that data lives within is an extremely powerful skill to have. And it's valuable, I would suggest, in your own workflows. It's certainly valuable to clients so that you can fulfill this service for other clients once you grasp it. So at this stage then, we can structure data, we can filter data, and we can trigger automations. What we need to understand from here is how to set up the automations themselves, and we can do that in make.com and Zapier, and we'll do that next. We have talked about APIs, we've talked about Airtable. The way that we can leverage Airtable to its fullest by connecting it to other platforms using APIs The way that we do that is through what may be referred to as a glue application or an automation platform. Two of the most powerful ones and most used would be Make.com and Zapier. And I love Make.com. I said that Airtable is one of my favorite no-code platforms. Make.com is hands down my favorite no-code tool. Make.com is so powerful. It shows visually the automations that we build, and it connects with most, if not all, of the tools that I want to connect with. A very, very powerful platform for building automation. It's a visual platform for creating automated workflows by connecting apps and services, and it allows you to automate tasks without writing code. It's a no-code platform. So we can automate workflows. We can connect multiple apps, many apps, and it's a visual process builder. If there is one tool that I would encourage you to get the pro license for, it would be Make.com. Don't miss the power of Make.com. And as time goes on, I will add on some extra workflows for Make.com. I can provide you with the file to upload into your account of Make.com so that you can take my workflows and immediately push them into your own account and have them set up. You have to then connect the accounts, but largely, once you've imported an automation that I have built, that I've defined, it will be ready to go inside of your account as well. Very, very powerful. Okay, let's talk about Make. Make is a platform that I use possibly the most out of all of the no-code tools that we've discussed. And I find it to be the most comprehensive, the most useful, the most visually appealing, perhaps not the right term, but the easiest to understand from a visual perspective. And we'll walk through that and we'll see how to build automations in Make, to see how effective it is within that stack of no-code tools and how important it is. We've referred to it already as a glue application, which takes two different platforms and allows us to stick them together. Or you could think of it as a conduit or a funnel where we can take data from one application, push the data through Make, through that automation and into the next platform. It's a very, very important part of the no-code stack. And with regards to APIs, the APIs that exist on the platform on one side and on the other, the APIs rely on a tool like Make to be able to talk to one another. So it's a very important tool. One of my favorite. I think I've said that each of the no-code tools that we've discussed is my favorite, but this one really is. So let's have a look at Make and see what we can do with it. We can automate our work and we can build lots and lots of different things in all different aspects of our businesses. I like to start from scratch, and you might know what you want to automate. You might know this platform that you want to get to talk to this other platform, but one of the more powerful aspects of Make as well is this ability to, one, to start with a template from Make's own library of templates, but also to look at the possibility of sharing automations between users. So I have a library of automations that I'll share with you one by one and walk through them, and you'll be able to upload my templates on my workflows into your account as well. And that's a really great place to start. Make's an excellent tool for saving time and building consistency into our business, because we can systemize workflows and get the same system every single time. It's very powerful for us to document a system, isn't it? And share it with perhaps a VA and share it with other humans on our team. And as long as we are consistent in working through those workflows, then we get the same results every time. It's how we McDonaldize, or it's the franchise model where we want a particular system to be followed to get the same result. That's why fries look the same everywhere the world over. But with an automation platform like Make, then we really can bake in that consistency where the automation does the same thing every single time. Every time we ask it to go from start and work its way through the process, we get the same output. And if we get the wrong output, we can tweak it, and then there's the consistency again moving forward. We get consistency and we save time because Make can work through a system much faster, pulling data from multiple platforms and gathering data together. It moves much faster than we can as a human, but it's a wonderful platform. So we'll look at an existing automation that I've built, and just as an example, and then we'll look at the templates to see what else that we can do with Make as well. Okay, so let's look at a blank scenario, which is how we refer to an automation inside of Make. Once you're logged in, you would just go to create a new scenario, and it opens up the blank canvas. And what I love about Make is this space that as we begin to build out the automation, we can see each step visually, how it flows and how it connects to the next step along. So, for example, we've got down at the bottom left, we've got the ability to run our automation manually, and we set up how often the automation runs. It says we can't schedule an empty scenario, but this is how we can say, okay, I want it to happen every single time something happens externally. I want to trigger this automation, or we might say to Make, every hour on the hour, I want you to fire this automation, and we can schedule that down here as well. And so we've got different tools that are important to us at the bottom here, but let's begin to add in modules to look to see how to connect them together. So if I show you one that exists already, then now this one is a relatively complex automation, and we'll look at some simpler automations after this, but I just want to walk you through this to help you to understand what's going on. And I can make this a bit simpler if we do this. Let's take these away. So I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and drag my cursor to select different modules that you can see on the screen just now. I'm just going to hit delete. I want to make it visually a little simpler. Don't need this one, that's old. And taking away these break modules, and I'll explain those in a second. Those are partly how we handle errors that come up. And so just to make it more visually appealing for us, to keep things ordered, to keep things evenly spread out, just to keep things ordered, to keep things visually more appealing, we can use this auto-align function. So when you add modules in, when you drag them around, you can just clean things up easily by clicking this auto-align. And then I'm just going to use my trackpad, pinch on my trackpad to take the zoom down a little. So what's happening here is that we've got a trigger, which is how all Make automations begin. And we want to take the initial platform that we're bringing data in from, or we want to take the initial trigger that fires the automation. We want to start with that. And we can see that there's this, they all look relatively similar with a circle, but here's an extra thing to pay attention to, is on the very first module, we need to have some sort of a way of scheduling or telling Make when to fire the automation. And that's what this refers to. So if I click on this, we can see these options. It's given me a drop-down box where we can say, okay, at regular intervals, I want you to fire this every 15 minutes. Or I might want to say, okay, every day, let's do this automation at this particular time every day, or on these days of the week, specify dates. And this last one is an interesting one, and I often use on demand. And you could be, what have I just done? So your scenario is scheduled but not active yet. Would you like to activate it now to run as planned? Let's just hold the phone there. So we're going to run this on demand. And what on demand means is that it's not going to automate at all. until you manually request it to do so. And I'll show you that in a second. So this particular automation is going to listen or watch for an event that happens inside of Airtable. And what it's looking for is in Airtable, when we have a record that moves from one view on the left-hand side here into another view, then Make is going to watch for that event. And when that event happens, it's going to send a signal into make.com. And as we said, based on the setting that we've defined here for our scheduling, it's actually not going to trigger it to run straight away, but it has sent a signal so that when I say run once, then this automation is going to look to see if that signal has happened in Airtable. And if it has happened, it'll take the data that's been sent and it will start to work the data along this workflow. So all that to say is that Make is watching for an event in Airtable, and it will see that that's happened in Airtable. Airtable sends a signal, and then Make catches the data that's been sent and just holds it, and it's ready to go. So when I hit run once, it's going to run this process. So let's do this. Let's just walk through it so we can see what happens then. So this automation is going to watch Airtable, grab a Vimeo URL from Airtable, grab the Vimeo ID from that URL. It's going to reach out to Vimeo, ask for a transcription, bring the transcription back into Make, and then send it back into Airtable. So that's what it does beginning to end. So if I go into Airtable, let's just set up an example one, just to give you context of what's happening in this particular Airtable. We have a Webflow site, and I've gone to the CMS, all of the data in Webflow, and I've downloaded the data from Webflow in a particular structured CSV. I've uploaded the CSV into Airtable, and that's where we get this structure from, with these headings and columns. And so what I need to do is, I need to just add on a record underneath here, because I'm just going to fake this one for this example. And I know that I need maybe 3 pieces of information. So let's go to Vimeo. If I open up our Vimeo account, I'm logged in already. I'll just take the last video that was uploaded to the AdSkills Vimeo account. I am going to grab the URL. So now I have the URL for that video, and I'm going to drop it into Airtable. Okay, so that's one of the pieces of the data we need. Let's just grab the title of the video as well. I think I may also need the course. Let's just say that this is agency. Last one, I'll just fake this item ID, which is actually an item ID from Webflow. And if I just say like something like that. Okay. So the last part now is that we've got this brand new record, interview with Greg Rowlett. It's in grid view, and I want it to come into this get transcript view, because I know that that's how I'm going to trigger an event to happen in make.com. So if I go to the stage, just looking for status, here we go. So I'll click on status, and because I've filtered this get transcript view, filtered by status, status is get transcript. So I want to make that happen for our example record. So I'll say get transcript. And now if I go to the get transcript view, I can see that our example record is in here, interview with Greg Rowlett. So now if I go back to make, I'll just hit save because I made some changes there before. And if I hit run once, we're going to see some things happen. We're going to see some processing on the front end, and hopefully we're going to see these little thought bubbles. They look like thought bubbles, and they indicate that something has happened within that stage of the automation, and then we'll have a look to see what's going on. So if I run this once, I'm going to click run once. It's going to take the entire automation and attempt to run the whole automation. What this relies upon is the Airtable in the first part, the trigger, is able to see that I've made this change, get transcript. I've brought this record into the get transcript view. And as long as the automation can see that that's happened, then it should proceed happily. Let's test that now. So click run once. So we have some processing here. You can see that there's a thought bubble here on the Airtable module, text parser, 3 different interesting looking HTTP modules, Google Drive, and then a final one for Airtable here. So let's look to see what's happened then. So Airtable, we click on the thought bubble, we can see that the output, the right-hand side of this Airtable module, has given us this data. Now, that's good for me because I can see that an event happened in this module, and it's been able to see this particular URL that we've pulled in from Airtable. We can see the name of the record. We can see the course that we defined, an example here. We can see the ID, which is actually the Airtable ID. So the record ID from Airtable. And the status was get transcript. That's great. So that all looks good for me just now. I have a router here just now. And what this is doing is it's a fail-safe for me. I want to know if the Vimeo URL is present, then that's fine. Just continue with the process of the automation. If there's no Vimeo URL present, then I've just said, okay, don't continue. Just update Airtable to give me a visual cue that I need to come and check this particular record. Something has failed, something's missing. It's a visual cue for me. And I would know then to go back into Airtable and see, it would go into this review required view, and I would know to update it. But we can see that it was successful. So if I zoom in here, we've got a filter which says, if the Vimeo URL is present, then that just says you can continue. So very quickly, without getting too deep into Make at the moment, until we start to build these out together, we'll just look to see what else is happening in this automation. We have a text parser module, and we can see that that's taken the text, which is the input, which is the left-hand side of the module, data coming into this module. The text is the entire URL for the Vimeo video. And then the output is this number string here, which has been pulled from the URL. So we've thrown away the extra parts of the URL, and we just want to know what the ID is of the Vimeo video. So that's good. On the right-hand side of this module, we're passing the data on to the next one. So this one looks a bit more complicated. I'll open this module up to see what we're doing here. But we're using an API, Vimeo API, and we're saying, at this stage, I want to get the text track, the text representation of the audio. I want to go, I'm going to get it, and I've got an authorization here, and then hopefully this value here will be blurred out by the time you see this video. That's part of my authentication. And all this module is doing is it's saying, okay, there's not a Vimeo module inside of make.com that allows us to do what we want to do. So we've used this vanilla API module, and we've asked that module to go out to Vimeo. We've referenced the Vimeo documentation for the API, and we have set it up inside of this HTTP module. And as we build out these make automations together, you'll see how powerful that is, because we can go beyond the standard availability of options inside of make.com, and we can begin to use everything that's available to us in any of these APIs that we want to work with. The first one looks for the track and gets a bundle of data. The second one pulls out the particular piece of data that we want. and the third one grabs the file. That's what happens. So it's a 3-part process there, and it's just grabbing the transcript. And we get to this point again, and this is just a fail-safe as well to see if something goes wrong, though we can update Airtable. But Google Drive, this module is saying, okay, once you get the file, I want you to send it to Google Drive, create a file in Google Drive, and upload the file that we've pulled down from Vimeo. So it's documented in a Google Drive. And then the last step is just to go and to update Airtable again to say that the status is now transcribed. It's no longer get transcript. It's not getting transcript. It's transcribed. And that just closes the loop on Airtable so that our record is no longer in the get transcript view, but it should be in the transcribed view. If we go all the way to the bottom, it's automatically been added to this transcribed view. So that's the process from beginning to end. And as I say, that's a relatively complex automation, but I want to demonstrate to you what we can do where we begin with one application, we have another application on the other side. And that sounds like a process in full, that if we have one application, it can talk to another application. But this is the strength or the beauty of make.com, where we can visually build a map where that process happens multiple times within one automation, where each of these individual modules, beginning with the Airtable module, and then to the text parser, and then make calling out to Vimeo, make calling out to Google Drive, we're able to take this individual step in an automation where one application talks to another application, we can chain them together and pass the same data all the way along the chain. So some of the automations that we may build to begin with would be one application sends data to another, end of story. But I want you to see the power of an automation in Make that has multiple steps, that chain steps together and gives us a complex process which happens simply once it's dialed in, and it's very powerful, and it just makes things a lot more efficient. And as we said, we get the same result every single time. Let's look at something that I've removed from this automation. We said before that we need to be able to figure things out. When things break, when we're building automations, when we're chaining no-code tools together, things often have a little red flag that says, okay, this is not working right now. You may have something that's working well, and then something changes on one side of the automation or the other, and an application may update their API, and then something breaks, something stops working. Or it may be that there's a particular allowance of the events that you can ask to be automated within a certain period of time. So for example, an API may say that you can ask for 100 events to be requested within 15 minutes. That's your allowance. And if you break through that allowance by asking for 200 events to be processed within that time, then the API is going to stop answering properly. There's going to be a problem. There's going to be a breakdown in your automation, and you won't know about it until there's an error, and perhaps the make.com automation just blocks everything and stops working. So there's something we can do, which is a little advanced, but I want to make you aware of it. And we can say anytime we're interacting with an external API using Make, we want to be able to build in an error handler. And one of the simplest error handlers on make.com is this module that refers to a break. So let's go to the first one. And if we just say, when we call out to Vimeo, I'll right click on this module. I'm going to add an error handler, and I'll just say I want the break module. Okay. And the default settings on a break module say, yes, automatically complete the execution. Yep, that's good. How many times do we want it to retry if it fails the first time? So standard, let's say 3 times. And how long do we want to wait in between attempts to complete the automation? So we're going to say 15 minutes. And that just means that when we call out to Vimeo and ask for the data, if there's a problem, if we've used our allowance, or if Vimeo is having a bad day and it's not quite working in that particular moment, then we're going to say, if that fails, wait 15 minutes and reattempt. If it fails again, wait another 15 minutes and then reattempt. And it'll do that 3 times before it lets you know that it's failed completely. And I'll show you how to look to see for successful completions and failed completions. So I'm just going to hit OK on this. And if we just drag this, you can see that the layout has changed a little. So we'll drag this one here. Let's add an error handler back into all of these. It's just the standard settings, 3 attempts, 15 minutes in between each attempt. Just try to keep this ordered so we can see what's happening. Now, if you add in these modules, but you haven't told Make that it's okay to do this, then it doesn't work, which is a little bit strange, but I'll show you how to tell Make that we are okay with these break modules happening. I'll hit save just now, just to save all the changes that I've made. And if we go down to scenario settings, so that's the settings for this particular scenario and only this scenario. So we want to say, allow storing of incomplete executions. And we want to click yes. By default, that's going to say no. So we have to say yes, allow storing of incomplete executions. And that's all we need to do in the settings. And then we'll save. And what that means is we're just saying all of these break modules that we've set up, we're giving a defined permission to Make to actually use those break modules. The break modules rely on that permission, so it's important to set that up. Add in one more here. But we don't need to put a break module on the text parser because the text parser is not calling out to an API. It's not relying on an external API functioning properly and sending data back. So we only need to put these break modules onto the API calls or interacting with an outside app or a third-party app. So if we go back a step here, I am one layer deep from the left-hand menu. I am at scenarios, and then I click on the particular scenario, and it takes us to this LMS Vimeo get transcription. So I can go to history, and I can go to incomplete executions, and I can see successful completions of the automation or incomplete or failed. So if I click on incomplete, there's nothing here because it worked properly. And if we go to the history, we can see not just a tracking of the successful completions of the automation, but we can see what actually happened as well. So if we click on details on the right-hand side, you go to what looks like that screen that we were on before, but it's not just the standard display of this automation, the standard representation of it. It's actually a representation of a particular automation that has run, and it shows us what happened within that automation. So this is super useful if we're trying to troubleshoot something. This is a successful completion. We get the same effect if we look in incomplete executions, and we can go through step by step and see what's gone wrong if there's an incomplete execution and see if we need to fix anything. And that's most useful during the setup process. So if I click on the first one, first thought bubble, I can see it's our example, interview with Greg Rowlett. I can see the relevant data that we want to see in here. And if we go to, including the URL, Vimeo URL, and if we go to text parser, we've seen the Vimeo URL. It turns into the Vimeo ID, and then goes along this chain, which is defined by the Vimeo API documentation. And I can see that the input was this request, and the output was a status code 200, which is a successful API interaction. If we go to the data, we may be able to see some of the data that was passed. Yeah, and that's important then. So we look to see the URLs that are involved, and this is a successful packet of data being sent back from the Vimeo API. And so this just shows us within the history, it shows us where we are with successful completions. It shows us what's happened with incomplete executions, and then we can troubleshoot along the way. And if we want to go back to edit that particular scenario again, we can just click into it at this point. So let's go and look at how you can begin to build out your first scenario. And we will build out other scenarios together, but I want to look briefly at the templates section of make.com, which can just help you to see what's available, what's being stored in the template library, so that you can find out anything that relates to an application that you may be looking to optimize and automate. And so if we go to the templates section, once we're logged in, we can scroll through all of these, lots and lots and lots of them, and see how many. So if we go to the search bar, we can actually just type in Webflow. We'll click on Webflow, and then we're just going to filter all of the automation templates that relate to that particular application. And then if we want to filter again, we could say, okay, I only want to see automations that have this application and this application. So we could say, Google Sheets. So now we can only see automation templates which contain references to both Webflow and Google Sheets. And then we can clear these to get back to the main library. So let's just have a quick look at one particular automation. We say about Google Sheets and say ConvertKit. So we can, there's a particular automation template here that will take new rows in a Google Sheet and then automate data into ConvertKit. So if we click on this, we'll just have a quick look at how to set this up. So if we click into the automation, this is the template. And it's important to note that each of these modules is in the correct place in the automation. It's linked to the correct module and it's in the correct order. That's good. But we have a little bit of work to do. So if we say skip guided setup, if you click on this, then it will walk you through it. That's super helpful. If we skip the guided setup, let's just have a quick look at this. We have the modules, they're in the correct place, but Make doesn't know which Google account to use. So we have to tell it which account to use, and we have to set up permission. So we need to authenticate with that module. And the same for ConvertKit. Make just knows that it wants to talk to this particular module. It doesn't know which ConvertKit module. It doesn't know which ConvertKit account in the world to talk to. So if we click on ConvertKit, we already have some connection here because I've already connected our Kit account to this make.com account. But if that wasn't the case, you'd be prompted to set it up, or I could hit add and I could update the name and I could go out to kit.com and grab the API key from settings, bring it back here, paste it in and hit save. And that would be the authentication. And we will walk through that when we build these out together. But that's what it would take to get ConvertKit to know, to get make.com to know which ConvertKit account to use. And then we would have to do that with Google Sheets as well. And so that's just a simple way to go into the templates, to bring in a scenario, and first of all, to be informed about what's available, about what you can do, about what applications you can connect together. Bearing in mind that there are some limitations where there may be a vast array of options available to us if we reference the API documentation, but within make.com, we may only see 10 or 15 options for a particular application. So we can be inspired by the template library, but not limited by it. And so one thing to do is just to get busy with Make, launch an account, go to the template library, and just begin to drop in a simple automation template and connect the modules to your own accounts and just start there. And we will revisit Make and build together through a number of different automations, and we can explore those together.